Hello everyone and welcome back. It's been a while since we've done a mod review, but the Hung have finally released. This is a mod that I've been able to test up whilst it's been in development, and I feel like a lot of people are going to quite like this as it's another look at chaos, but from a different point of view. Representation of chaos is very odd when it comes to Warhammer Fantasy because in lore there's quite a lot, but when you look towards minis, most people just see Warriors of Chaos and, by extension, Norskins. But the Hung are a big factor here too. And they're another type of Northmen. These guys are fully nomadic, and you can see that represented with the mod where you've got tribal gatherings, tribal loyalty, and you're going to be focusing quite heavily on cavalry. The gatherings themselves will be kind of similar to that of the ogres, but you still have quite a lot of moving camps when it comes to your normal armies. We're going to be talking about all this and more. And you do have 2 legendary lords to play around with alongside a few minor factions which were going to be littered across the Warhammer Fantasy world. Mostly in the north, the 2 playable characters can be found in the far north. One is going to be very close to Cathay, as it's going to be centered around fighting Cathayan factions, and the other one is going to be in the far western portion of the map, fighting against the Dark Elves. So you're going to throw back to their general lore, fighting against the Cathayans, but also a little bit of a nod to the Storm of Chaos, because this is one of the tribes that were enslaved by the Dark Elves, more specifically the Cult of Sunesh. So we're going to talk about both of the playable factions. We've got the first one with Khan, and he leads the Hmong. So we got faction effects as follows: tribute from vassals plus 10% for each active war. Landlocked tribesmen, leadership, melee attack, and melee defense -8 when fighting at sea, all armies. Harbinger of the Raging Sky. Harbinger of the Raging Sky. Chosen by the ruinous powers as their herald, Khan rides forth, raising cities and expanding the endless steppe across all the world. Melee attack +4 when fighting against the Dark Elves, all armies. Double experience for units when fighting against Dark Elves. And finally, the Lord effects as follows: passive ability, Rage for Hung Cavalry, Lord's Army. Weapon strength +10% for Hung Cavalry, Lord's Army. Missile resistance 10% for Hung Cavalry, Lord's Army, and spell resistance 10% for Hung Cavalry, Lord's Army. Your campaign will begin in the top left-hand corner of the map. This is probably one of the hardest of the two if you want to start getting vassals quite early, as you're going to have to deal with Valkyria very early on, and she is pretty damn strong. But you're expected to push down and deal with the Dark Elves, your starting mission basically being to take out some of the Dark Elf factions there. And your Legendary Lord is going to help you do just that. He's got a unique skill line which is going to focus on, 1, getting some pretty decent upkeep reductions, and then getting some blessings from all the Chaos Gods. He's a melee-focused Legendary Lord, and he does have a lot of buffs to go about that. He does quite a lot of damage, in all honesty. He's just very squishy early on versus Valkyria, but I think most Legendary Lords generally are, as she is one of the best fighters. But as you level through, you have access to 3 unique items, all of them fairly decent, and their own custom quest battles too. It's something that we're seeing a lot more commonly now with a lot of mods, which is really cool. It adds to the flavor. It cements a lot of these mods as close to DLC quality. You're going to get that feeling a lot with the Hung. So this character also is a Horde. You're going to be getting a lot of Hordes here. It's a Horde-based race, so they're not going to be building up, but you can have cities in a sense with the camps. We'll talk about those a little bit later. Naturally, your Legendary Lord will have access to unique buildings, which makes a lot of sense, and you'll get some buffs which are specific to just that character. You do have a special mission alongside your narrative victory, which is going to focus around the end times. This will give you some dilemmas. I'll let you explore that in your own right. What you do have to do is expand the endless steppe. And as far as I've seen, it just naturally comes to you. You just play through your campaign, get into some damage, raise some cities, and the endless steppe will start expanding, giving you some bonuses as it expands. It's a pretty cool system. I like it because it gives you reason to kind of just go and destroy. I mean, that's basically the main way that you're going to be able to build up your forces anyway, but it's nice to be further rewarded for that. The second playable Legendary Lord is Zho Core, and he leads the Manchu. Some of the faction effects, as you can see, are kind of the same, which is Fearful Subjects and Landlocked Tribesmen, but then stuff starts changing with the Manchu invasion. Zho Core leads his tribe in a relentless mission to bypass the Great Bastion and ravage the lands of Cathay. Hostile actions against the Cathayans will inspire minor Hung tribes to join the invasion. Melee attack +4 when fighting against Cafe for all armies. Double experience gain for units when fighting against Cafe. Lord effects are as follows. Passive ability, Relentless Invaders during siege battles, Lord's Army. Armor piercing, weapon damage +5 for Hung Raiders and Hung Pillagers. Weapon strength +10% for Hung Raiders and Hung Pillagers, both for Lord's Army. And finally, missile resistance, 10% for Lord's Army. This faction, as you can expect, is in the northern Chaos Waste right in front of the Great Bastion, and you've got quite a lot of enemies because you're going to be pushing straight into Cafe very early on. You do have a decent amount of possible factions there for vassals, but keep in mind that you're going to have to deal with Village the Cursing, who's quite a strong lord, and also Zatan, the Chaos Lord over there too for the Chaos Dwarfs. The unique skill line is kind of cool. You're going to be getting some buffs towards yourself. Keep in mind that this is a rather selfish character, so as you start getting more and more buffs coming on, you will also take some negatives towards your own troops. Some leadership reduction, but you will progress through a rather lengthy line, which is going to give you a lot of power, making this character absolutely terrifying. And you're going to be boosting up fire resistance towards your troopers, so don't worry, the negative isn't just for that. Your army is going to be fairly expensive though, keep that in mind, due to upkeep being increased, but then making them very, very strong. Then at the end of the line itself, you're going to get a massive upkeep reduction, not towards your army, but faction-wide. So there's a bit of negatives at the beginning, leading towards very, very strong positives. You've got 4 items there for your unique items, which is lovely. Again, all with custom quest battles too. Both of the characters are very, very fun to play, so it all depends on what you're looking for in terms of just, do you want to fight against Cafe? Do you want to fight against the Dark Elves? Which challenge do you want first? Both of them have their own specific challenges, so it's going to make you feel like you are playing a faction that is kind of weak at the beginning, yet getting progressively stronger as you start getting access to your cavalry, which is a cavalry focused faction, and a lot of really special type of units too. And yes, you do have access to a unique building in your Horde building also, alongside a very fun unit. You'll see that a little bit later on. It's a really interesting take, actually. Very, very interesting take. Being a Shackle Dragon, which is a Cafaean dragon that's been kind of broken mentally. It's really curious, honestly. I like it. So this faction's mechanic is a reversal of the Cafe base mechanic, you know, defending the Great Bastion, where you're going to want to get into fights versus the Cafaean factions to build it up, and that's going to launch invasions against Cafe. And it won't really take too long to get this from actually starting off. You'll have some armies that you'll be able to just tell them where to go. You won't be able to control them outright. They technically count as your ally here. And yeah, it's the Cafaean invasion stuff, which is pretty cool. This means that if you want to slow down some enemies, if you want them to deal with maybe some settlements which are kind of half broken and so on, or maybe just some weaker ones, it's always good to have the distraction Carnifex when dealing against the Cafaean defense forces. Alright, now we're going to start talking about mechanics, because there's quite a few. Obviously, you do have stances where you've got a moving camp stance, but you've also got a lot of extra movement, so you're going to be able to travel across the Chaos Waste without too much of an issue. This is a very mobile faction, so being able to get extra movement and stuff just really helps. You do still obviously have raiding stance, and you do have ambush. I feel like you're going to be using them a little bit less, especially as you do get a decent amount of income if you make your camps start raiding themselves in a very similar fashion to that of the Ogre Kingdoms. Alright, the tech tree is massive. It's a custom tech tree, as you can imagine, each of them focused on their own specific areas, but they all line up near the end. You will have noticed plunder too, but we'll talk about plunder a little bit later on, don't you worry about that. Really, you'll be progressing around these 3 different branches as you see fit. The left is going to be focused around movement and stuff like that, which I think is quite important at the beginning of the campaign, but depending on the player, this is going to be very much focused on your own styling here. But I haven't seen any holes whatsoever in the tech tree, which is great to see. You can stop wherever you want if you want to stop here. And really, the main thing that you're going to see that's going to take a while to get, I think, is more of the extra tribes that you can see down there, which is going to be a lot of plunder. Plunder doesn't take too long, don't you worry about that. It just depends on how quickly you move around and trade with your cities. Don't you worry, you can get a few more tribes through just progressing through your tech tree quite nicely, to be honest. And it doesn't take too long to progress through each of the branches, depending on if you have extra research rate, obviously, but it's not going to be one of those things that you're feeling like you're at the end of the campaign and still got a lot of the tech tree still to unlock. In general, just with some early thoughts regarding this faction, you've got a little bit of everything. If you've been hankering from some more chaos and you just want a different style, I think this mod is going to be very good for you. It's a massive shame we don't see this representation in game, but it's not really CA here, it's more Games Workshop never really fleshed out the northern tribes as much, which kind of sucks, I'm not gonna lie. Alright, we're gonna talk about the Khan's Horde now, which is focused around plunder. As you can imagine, you've got a few ways of getting it, you know, characters assassinated, getting enemy lords killed or wounded, events, stolen valuables, and a tribute offered by tribal gatherings. And it's used on a lot of stuff, right? You've got events, you've got rites, technologies, there's so much there. And a good way about it is just naturally playing. Your armies will end up getting plunder, as you can see. You will just have to trade it with your tribal gatherings. It's very much like the Ogre Kingdoms, where you're going to be sending it to your camps, and then at the bottom there you've got some tributes that you can do depending on the amount that you have, and that's going to give you more of your Khan's Horde. It's a pretty cool system, I like it. It does mean obviously keep your gathering safe, but in general you're going to want to do that anyway, which those camps can be moved the same way as the Ogre ones can, which is a really good system. I like that mechanic, to be honest. Your plunder can be used with your rites. You have 4 different ones, and it focuses on each of the Chaos Gods, giving you some very nice bonuses for a number of turns. It's a pretty cool system. Again, rights, it's weird that we just don't see them anymore. I know that Creative Assembly wanted them to be a exclusive thing for Warhammer 2 factions, but it'd be nice to see this more often. I think some factions could benefit from it. A lot of the unique mechanics here just kind of synergize, which I think is very, very cool. It just cements them as their own race. Now we have something called Treacherous Dealings, which some people might think, oh, it's like, oh, well, it's a Zinch mechanic. And, well, by the usage, yes. But it's a lovely throwback to just how the Hung do diplomacy, which is, you know, we make deal, yes, you give us and we won't attack. You don't give us enough, so we will attack. Well, we're going to attack anyway. Yeah, you can't diplomacy with these guys like you can with, say, for example, the Norskins. They can be reasoned with depending on the tribe, but not the Hung. Then we have the Adaptive Warlords. So this is a mechanic which is going to focus around you being aggressive. The more aggressive you are, you're going to be able to get some points, which is going to give you some bonuses, but it'll also give you access to certain units. These aren't just like normal units, some of them can be quite unique. The idea here is just making you keep on pushing. Now, one thing that you do need to do is keep the momentum going. If you start slowing down for recruitment or whatever, you will lose out on the bonuses, you will start getting them removed. I like this, it incentivizes you just to keep attacking. And you can build up multiple armies eventually to be able to just have that momentum going further and further. So stuff is like dealing with the Far East with Cafe, dealing with chaotic allies, or just killing off the Dark Elves and stuff. It's a pretty cool system. As you can see here, I've got 1 settlement raised because you're going to have to go for the regions around that specific marker. And the flavor text will tell you what to kill, right? So like in the Far East, it's not just the Githayans, but it's also dealing with the Ogres too. You're also going to need resources under your Khan's Horde. Again, really showing off the synergy that was implemented here. It's very clear that Salty Old Fisherman really wanted to make something very, very unique, and I think he's done just that. Right, let's talk about your camps, right? Because it's not going to be just for your plunder. These are your cities, as you won't be able to settle in actual normal cities. You've got the settlement there. The longer that they're there, you'll be able to get some bonuses because they're semi-settled. They can be just firmly settled. You can remove them. You can build them up in other locations, which is going to be very useful to them. If you want to keep them in one specific area, that is totally fine too. And this is going to work just like the Ogre stuff. So you've got skill lines there. You've got bonuses that you can get. I frankly quite like the Ogre mechanics, so seeing that reused for a faction where it makes a lot of sense to do so is very smart in my opinion. Your defenses are more focused around a settlement building that's just going to be, you know, your garrison and so on. And a good way that I've seen using them is getting yourself like a rather strong vassal where you know you're going to be fairly well defended and just putting a tribal gathering over there. It's safe enough. Village, Valkyr, one of the ones that you know are going to be fairly well entrenched. Which I just want to warn, don't try to make the Norskins your vassal from the very beginning, as Valkyr or Village will take them as soon as they take their Dark Fortress. You're going to have to fight Valkyr or Village, but if you do, you'll get them both. It's all about planning, but yes, the Warriors of Chaos can steal the northern tribes from you. And for those wondering, yes, you do have custom events that pop up, for example, like this, where you can get some heroes. There's some other stuff that pops up throughout your campaign quite naturally, which is very, very good, because again, it's stuff that cements the faction to feel seamless in a already very, very huge world. Alright, let's talk about Lord and Hero options. For Lords, you have access to two different types. The first one is the Khan, which is your melee-focused character. He is your basic one, I guess, is probably the best way to go about him. He's got melee, he's got horses, well, you'll get horses as you improve. And yeah, he's pretty good. He can hold out his own. He's not going to be as strong as a Chaos Lord, for example, but he's still going to be able to hold out his own in combat. Once you get him on his horse, that's when he gets a lot better. Because you've got the speed, you can also get like quite heavy defenses there too. You've got a lot of skill lines there which focus again around the Chaos Gods a little bit, so that means that you can theme them up. You've got different ones and each of them is locked as soon as you pick one, so each of your lords can be very, very different depending on your specific playstyle. It's very much like a mark system. Now, you do have other lord options too, which are going to follow a similar route, which is the cartoon. This is your other lord option, and it's going to focus more on doing some range damage. So you've got an option for a range lord, you've got an option for a melee lord. You don't have a spellcaster lord, but don't worry, you do have spellcasters that you can use with different types of magic there. But it fits the theme. The shaman isn't leading the hung here. It's usually just like a Khan. So you've got a male version and a female version, because we do know that the hung do employ their women in battle also. Okay, we're going into the heroes now, and you have a few different types. Spellcasters, you've got some melee heroes, some ranged heroes. The idea here is everything is kind of like centered there. You've got some spells with the Lore of the Beast, the Lore of Chaos, and also the Lore of the Raging Sky. Each of the heroes are pretty good in their own right, so it depends on what you need to field out. And I think that that's really, really cool, especially with the interpretation of magic. I think magic has been done fairly well. So the Lore of Chaos itself focuses around being a chaos lore, but undivided, right? So you've got some spells of Tzeentch, some spells of Sinesh, and some spells of Nurgle. I like that. I really, really like that, especially since we've been seeing that now with Warhammer the Old World, for example. And it's a little throwback to just how magic worked back in the day in early editions too. It's nice. It's definitely very, very nice. Whereas the Lore of the Raging Sky is a new spell lore, and you've got some buffs, you've got some wind spells. It's got a little bit of everything, and it really synergizes quite well with the playstyle of the hung itself, because you've got some bonuses that you can take. You've got some spells kind of inspired by what happened with Ostenka, where you can use it on your enemies or you can use it on yourself. I like it. It's a very cool spell lore. It definitely adds in a little bit of flavor. I think unique laws of magic is something that really makes a faction feel full. And it's something that, like, for example, we're kind of missing at the moment with the Wood Elves, but you never know in the future, especially with how Creative Assembly have been jumping into fixing up other factions. Now, when it comes to the generic heroes, you've got some others there that you can take advantage of. You have the Catil and the Dagger, which are the hero versions basically of your lord options, which is good to have, with the Dagger being more of, well, he's melee focused very heavily, but he's also got some support abilities, and your Catil is an assassin type too. So you've got like extra uses for them. Basically gives them multi-purpose, which I think is kind of important when you want certain heroes, especially when you're trying to implement a rather unknown race like the Hung. You're trying to add everything but not give them too much bloat. So yeah, I think this works out very, very well. Alright, now we're jumping into the roster portion, and your roster is surprisingly large. And it really hits pretty much all the mark. Now, you do have a decent amount of foot troops, but yes, you will be getting into sieges, you will be attacking walls, so you can't really just use that with horsemen, can you? They're not the best, but they make sure that you've got access to anything that you do need. So you've got some like additional hand weapon stuff, you've got some just general damage, some shielded stuff. They're pretty cool. They look absolutely amazing too. Again, remember that this faction, specifically this race, hasn't really had a lot of interpretations. Like, we have a fair amount of lore, but it's never that thorough. This is a big issue that always happened to Warhammer Fantasy, and I'm really hoping gets expanded upon with the Old World, especially as we do know that the Northern Chaos Race has been getting a fair amount of love lately. Maybe we get some lore going into that. You do have access to a lot of ranged troops too on the foot, which I like also because you do need to have as much as you can. So foot troop wise, you've got around 11 troops counting between melee and ranged, and I think that's quite decent. It's like not amazing in terms of numbers, but again, these guys aren't really, they're not really supposed to be a foot-faring faction. I like it. I think it's pretty cool. The units look fantastic. They serve their purposes. And yes, I would say that you're going to want to bring a few of these with you. You can have them hiding in the trees if you don't want them being killed off too early. And they can be buffed up to be fairly good. So don't think that they're just going to fall behind once you start getting your cavalry into the game. I know I haven't spoken about these units too highly, but I mostly focused around the cavalry themselves because you get those glorious charges. You're going to be hidden running a lot. The micro is quite cool here, but don't you worry, you can go with a traditional army with infantry and stuff like that and don't feel like you're just dying out. Now, cavalry, yeah, you've got a lot. There are so many different types here. You've got pretty much anything that you need. Some vanguards, some range units, some really heavy cavalry, skirmish cav. The idea here is that you're going to be able to just harass your enemy without really any issues. I like this. It's a different style of play, which I think is what really sets them apart from, say, for example, the Norskins. And this isn't even all your cavalry, because you will also have access to some Centaurs. We'll see them in just a little second. But yeah. Cavalry focused is really, really cool. I really like the idea of just like expanding that. This is why I wanted, say, for example, a Tribes of the North DLC for the Chaos factions, because it's kind of annoying when you see people just seeing Chaos and thinking of Norska. There's so much stuff. Games Workshop never really fleshed this out. I've said this before, and you never know for the future, but it's something that I feel can add a lot of flavor to Chaos, which I think is really underrepresented. But mind you, that's all the case for Warhammer Fantasy. If you look towards the Empire, everyone kind of looks the same if you look at Total War and so on, but all the provinces are supposed to be very, very different, and that's a big thing there. Monsters, you've got a unique take on the Centaurs. You've even got some proper like single entity ones, which is pretty cool. You've got mutated horses. You've also got this thing called a Death Worm, which, wow, looks incredible. I love it. I think that's really, really, really cool. Just in general, you've got a lot of stuff. Again, you're a fast faction. A lot of the stuff that you're going to be bringing out is relatively fast, and it's adding to this weird kind of culture. The interpretation of these Centaur things is actually really cool. Like, seriously, it blew me away when I saw it. It's like, wow, that's unique. Because they're not really Centaurs, but they're not really Centaurs either. Centaurs, for example, actually have hands where their feet are, and they're not really as bestial. So yeah, this interpretation is awesome, actually. And it's a shame I didn't ask Salty Old Fisherman what was his inspiration behind this, which I should, actually. I really should. And lastly, you've got access to some units that you'll be recruiting. So you'll be able to get like stuff like Dark Elves and so on, but there's other stuff too, where yeah, these guys have been scavenging, so you'll be able to get some hung on Longmars, for example, Scourge Runner chariots. You've got some big beasties there. You've even got a Cathayan dragon, which is just insane now, or with some thunder tusks. It's really cool. I like this. I actually really, really like this. It adds in the scavenging aspect. It adds in just something kind of unique there. You've got them there with like the blunderbusses from Cafe, just to give you some shooty boys. It's very, very curious. I don't think we've got a faction like this in lore. And you know what? This is something that I could see happening. Scavenging is really, really important, especially if you're a faction that generally just doesn't produce much. You're going to want to take your enemy's stuff and use it for yourself. It's a pretty cool system. Now, there is quite a lot here, right? It's a pretty long video as far as I've been able to record. I've got quite a lot of footage. I love the fact that Chaos has been getting a lot of attention. I know that people have been having Chaos fatigue when it comes for Warhammer 3, but it was kind of expected that we're just going to have a lot of Chaos. It's cool to see the modders jump into that too, because there is so much Chaos stuff that can be done, so it's good to see this done here. I've been able to test this mod during its production, and I have seen it evolve, and the genuine love that has been put into the development of this mod. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I do intend to stream it too, because I feel like this is one of those factions that I could have a lot of fun with on stream. I will say, for you guys who want to try it out, which by the way is linked in the description below, it can be hard at the beginning if you're trying to get your vassals. You got to plan that out well, because Valkyria is very difficult. Village is also very strong. So a wrong move at the beginning can be the end of your campaign, but I think that's the push there, right? I've had a lot of fun with this. I have had a bit of a burnout with Warhammer 3 because nothing's been going on. So when a mod comes out that piques my interest, that type of stuff really does help, I think, to keep the momentum going whilst we're waiting for 6.3 and Tides of Torment whenever that happens. If you've got a hankering for some Chaos and a unique take of Chaos, I'd say download this mod. You won't regret it. Let me know what your thoughts are on the mod in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. Once again, this is available right now. It's linked in the description. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very soon.